Tonight, I ask you to listen not merely with your ears, but with that quiet place within you where decisions are born long before actions ever appear. The title of what I am sharing is simple, yet it carries a power that reshapes lives when it is truly grasped. Assume the change before you see the change. This is not poetry for comfort, nor philosophy meant to entertain the intellect. This is a law of being, operating whether you are aware of it or not, responding faithfully to the inner position you occupy every day of your life. Long before circumstances rearrange themselves, long before people speak differently to you, long before doors appear to open, something far more important must shift first, and that shift always happens within. Most people wait. They wait for proof. They wait for signs. They wait for permission from the outer world to believe they are different, improved, successful, healed, loved, or free. And in this waiting, they unknowingly hold themselves in bondage. They say, when it changes, I will believe, not realizing that belief is the very cause of change. They demand evidence from life, unaware that life can only echo what they have already assumed to be true about themselves. The world, as you experience it, is not independent of you. It is not a separate authority deciding your fate. It is a mirror, and it reflects with precision the inner state you consistently occupy. To assume the change before you see the change means you reverse the usual order of living. You stop allowing appearances to dictate your inner state. You no longer ask, what is happening, and then feel accordingly. Instead, you decide who you are, what is true for you, and you feel from that decision as though it were already an accomplished fact. This assumption, sustained inwardly, sets forces in motion that no human planning could ever equal. It is not strain, it is not force, it is not denial of reality. It is the recognition that the inner reality is the only creative reality, and the outer world must in time conform to it. Think carefully about your own life. Notice how easily you assume certain things without effort. You assume the sun will rise. You assume your name when called. You assume your identity, your habits, your limitations, your expectations. These assumptions feel natural because you have lived in them so long. Now observe how effortlessly life confirms them. The difficulty you face is not that change is hard, it is that you are loyal to old assumptions that no longer serve you. You continue to think from the same place while wishing for different results. But life cannot contradict your inner position. It must express it. To assume the change before you see the change is to occupy, in imagination and feeling, the end you desire as though it were present now. It is to live inwardly as the person you wish the world to recognize outwardly. This does not mean pretending or putting on a mask. It means accepting internally a new identity. When you assume something deeply enough, it stops feeling like a wish and begins to feel like a fact. And when it becomes a fact within you, the outer world reorganizes to make it visible. Many people misunderstand this principle and believe it requires constant effort or mental repetition. They try to force thoughts, affirm all day, and watch anxiously for results. But true assumption is effortless. It is a quiet knowing. It is the calm acceptance of a new state. You do not constantly affirm your name, you simply know it. You do not struggle to believe the chair will hold you, you sit. In the same way, when you truly assume a new state of being, you rest in it. The struggle disappears because struggle belongs to the state of wanting, not the state of having. When you assume the change, before you see the change, you stop reacting to life and start directing it. Reactions belong to those who believe the outer world has power over them. Direction belongs to those who know that consciousness is the only power. If you allow every event, every word, every delay to determine how you feel about yourself, you are handing your creative authority away. But when you decide inwardly who you are, regardless of appearances, you reclaim that authority. You become the cause rather than the effect. This principle applies to every area of life without exception. If you desire freedom, you must assume the feeling of freedom before circumstances loosen their grip. If you desire abundance, you must inwardly know yourself as supported, secure, and valued before money reflects that knowing. If you desire love, you must feel loved, chosen, and worthy before relationships conform. Waiting for the outer world to validate you is the slowest and most painful way to live, because the outer world can only validate what you have already accepted within. You may ask, What about facts? What about reality as it is? Facts are only the frozen result of past assumptions. They are not permanent. They are not final. They are echoes. If you keep reacting to them, you keep recreating them. But if you understand that they are shadows of former inner states, you no longer argue with them. You gently withdraw your attention and place it where creation actually happens. You do not fight the shadow, you move the object casting it. Assuming the change before you see the change requires faith, but not blind faith. It is faith rooted in understanding. You are not hoping that something will work. You are aligning yourself with the way creation functions. Every invention, every achievement, every transformation in human history began as an inner assumption before it became visible. Someone imagined a reality that did not yet exist and accepted it as possible, then probable, then inevitable. The world caught up because it had no choice. The moment you assume a new state, something subtle yet profound happens. Your reactions change, your expectations shift, your choices align. You speak differently, you listen differently, you carry yourself differently, and people respond to this without knowing why. Opportunities appear not by magic, but by alignment. You notice what you could not see before because your inner position has changed. Life feels different because you are different. Do not underestimate the importance of feeling. Feeling is the seal of assumption. Thoughts may come and go, but feeling anchors a state. When you feel yourself to be the person you desire to be, then briefly you plant a seed that must grow. The subconscious mind does not respond to words alone. It responds to the reality implied by feeling. When you feel from the end, when you feel as though the change has already occurred, you impress that state upon the deepest level of your being. From there, it expresses itself naturally and inevitably. Many people say, I will feel better when things improve. This is backwards. You must feel better first. Feeling is not a reaction, it is a creative act. To assume the change before you see the change is to feel now what you would feel if your desire were already fulfilled. This feeling may be quiet, gentle, and simple. It does not need excitement. In fact, the calmer it feels, the more natural it is becoming to you. And what feels natural must externalize. You may encounter resistance, both from within and from the world. Old habits of thought may argue. Circumstances may appear unchanged for a time. This is not failure, it is transition. Every assumption has an interval between inner acceptance and outer expression. During this interval, you are tested, not by life, but by your own persistence. Will you remain loyal to the new state, or will you return to the familiar old one? The one you persist in will win, because persistence is what gives an assumption solidity. Do not look to the outer world for reassurance during this period. That is the quickest way to abandon your power. Instead, return inwardly, again and again, to the feeling of the wish fulfilled, not as an effort, but as a choice. You are choosing who you are being. You are choosing which state you occupy. And states, once occupied, express themselves. Ing. The change before you see the change also transforms how you relate to fear. Fear loses its grip when you realize it is simply a feeling attached to an old assumption. You do not fight fear, you replace the state that produces it. When you assume safety, worthiness, capability, and trust, fear fades because it has no foundation. The same applies to doubt. Doubt is not an enemy, it is a sign that you are standing between two states. Choose the new one, and doubt dissolves naturally. As you practice this way of living, you will notice something remarkable. You will stop trying to control outcomes. You will stop forcing timelines. You will stop chasing validation. Instead, you will move with a quiet confidence, knowing that what you have accepted inwardly must appear outwardly in its own way and time. This does not make you passive, it makes you aligned. Actions taken from assumption are inspired, not strained. They feel right because they flow from identity, not desperation. The greatest gift of assuming the change before you see the change is freedom. Freedom from waiting. Freedom from comparison. Freedom from the endless cycle of hope and disappointment. You no longer live at the mercy of appearances. You live from the center of your being, where choice replaces reaction and awareness replaces struggle. Life becomes something you participate in consciously, rather than something that happens to you. Tonight, I invite you to leave behind the habit of waiting for permission to be who you want to be. Decide now, decide inwardly. Accept the change as real within you, even if nothing around you seems to agree. Especially if nothing around you seems to agree. That is often the moment when your assumption is most powerful, because it is least contaminated by doubt. Stand inwardly in the state you desire. Feel it as natural. Let it become familiar. Speak to yourself from that place. Think from that place. Rest in that place. And then watch, not anxiously but expectantly, as life rearranges itself to reflect what you have already decided to be true. The world will catch up because it always does. Assume the change before you see the change, and you will discover that you were never meant to be a spectator in your own life. You were meant to be the source. And as you continue to live this way, something subtle but unmistakable begins to happen inside you. You stop feeling like a person trying to become something, and you start feeling like a person remembering who they already are. The urgency softens, the desperation fades. You no longer chase the future because inwardly you are already standing in it. This inner standing point becomes your home, and from that home you move through the world with a different rhythm, a different pace, a different certainty that does not need to announce itself. You will notice that when challenges arise, they no longer shake you in the same way. The outer world may still present delays, contradictions, or moments that seem to deny your assumption, but inwardly you remain anchored. You understand that these moments are not obstacles but remnants of an old state playing themselves out. Like echoes in a canyon, they may linger briefly, but they cannot reverse the sound that has already been made. You no longer personalize them. You no longer interpret them as signs of failure. You see them as evidence that movement is already happening beneath the surface. This inner stability is not indifference, it is mastery. You still care, you still desire, you still act, but you are no longer emotionally enslaved by outcomes. You have shifted from emotional reaction to conscious creation. When you assume the change before you see the change, you free yourself from the exhausting habit of constantly checking reality to see if it has complied yet. You trust the process because you understand the principle behind it. In this state, imagination becomes your most intimate companion. Not imagination as idle fantasy, but imagination as an instrument of experience. You do not imagine to escape life, you imagine to shape it. You enter scenes inwardly that imply your desire is fulfilled, not to daydream, but to familiarize yourself with a new normal. These inner experiences, when felt as real, train your consciousness to accept a different version of yourself as natural. And what consciousness accepts as natural, life must express. Notice how the world treats you differently when your inner assumption changes. People respond to you in ways they never did before. Opportunities arise that seemed impossible previously. Conversations take unexpected turns. None of this is coincidence. It is correspondence. Life is not reacting to your words or your wishes. It is responding to your state. Change the state and the response must change. You may find that old desires fall away as new ones take their place. This is a sign of growth, not loss. As you assume higher, freer, more expansive states, your standards change. What once seemed important no longer satisfies you. What once felt unreachable and now feels inevitable. This is the natural evolution of consciousness when it no longer accepts limitation as truth. At times, you may feel alone in this way of living, especially if those around you still operate from reaction and doubt. Do not let this discourage you. Inner shifts often occur quietly and privately before they become visible and shared. You are not meant to convince others with words. Your life will speak for you. The calm confidence you carry, the ease with which things unfold, the way you respond rather than react. These will communicate more powerfully than any explanation ever could. Remember that assuming the change before you see the change is not a one-time act. It is a way of being. It is a daily, moment-by-moment choice to return to the inner position you have selected. When you notice yourself slipping back into old patterns of thought, do not judge yourself. Simply redirect, gently, firmly, lovingly. You are not fighting yourself. You are educating yourself into a new identity. As this identity stabilizes, you will experience moments of deep peace, moments where everything feels aligned even if nothing outward has visibly shifted yet. These moments are precious. They are signs that your inner world is reorganizing itself. They are indicators that the assumption is taking root. Trust these moments. Nurture them. Return to them often, especially when the outer world tempts you to doubt. Over time, you will realize that what you once called patience was actually uncertainty, and what you now experience is quiet knowing. You are no longer hoping for change, you are allowing it. You are no longer waiting for life to surprise you, you are letting it confirm you. This shift changes not only what you receive from life, but how you experience yourself within it. And in this way, without force, without struggle, without announcement, you become the embodiment of the change you once sought, moving forward from an inner certainty that no appearance can shake. This inner certainty begins to express itself in the smallest details of your daily life. You notice it in how you wake up in the morning, in the quiet expectation that accompanies you before the day even begins. There is less mental noise, less internal argument about what might go wrong, because your attention is no longer scattered between hope and fear. It is gathered into a single direction. You are no longer divided within yourself. You have assumed a position, and from that position you observe life rather than brace against it. When you speak, your words carry a different weight, not because you are trying to sound confident, but because you are no longer asking the world to agree with you. You are expressing from an inner agreement that has already been made. This changes how people hear you. They may not consciously understand why, but they sense it. Authority is not something you demand. It is something you emanate when you are settled inwardly. And this authority does not come from dominance or control, but from alignment with yourself. You begin to realize that effort was never the missing ingredient. You may have worked hard before, tried harder than others, pushed and struggled endlessly, yet felt stuck. Now you see why. Effort without assumption is labor without direction. It exhausts without transforming. But action that flows from an assumed state feels lighter, even when it requires discipline. It feels purposeful. It feels guided. The same actions produce different results because they are no longer fueled by lack. As you remain loyal to this inner shift, time itself seems to behave differently. You stop measuring progress anxiously. You stop asking how long it will take. The need to control the timing dissolves because you are no longer waiting to arrive. You are already there inwardly. The future no longer feels like a distant place you must struggle toward. It feels like something that is steadily moving toward you, shaped by the state you are holding now. There will be moments when the outer world appears, to test your assumption deliberately. Situations may arise that mirror your old fears, old doubts, old stories about yourself. This is not punishment, it is exposure. Life is revealing what still lives within you so it can be released. When this happens, do not panic, do not abandon the state you have chosen. Simply observe and return inwardly to the feeling of the change already accomplished. Each time you do this, the old pattern weakens and the new one gains strength. You start to understand that discipline is not forcing yourself to think positively or ignore reality. Discipline is choosing again and again where you place your awareness. It is the gentle but firm refusal to dwell in states that contradict what you have decided to be true. This kind of discipline does not feel harsh. It feels respectful. You are honoring the version of yourself you have already accepted inwardly. Gradually, the inner conversation you have with yourself changes. The voice that once questioned, criticized, and doubted becomes quieter. In its place arises a tone of assurance, of permission, of allowance. You begin to speak to yourself as someone who expects life to work with them, not against them. And because the inner conversation is the blueprint for all experience, life responds accordingly. You may notice that problems no longer feel as personal as they once did. You still address them, but you do not identify with them. They are no longer reflections of who you are, but temporary conditions passing through your awareness. This separation gives you clarity. From clarity comes better decisions. From better decisions comes smoother outcomes. Not because life has suddenly become easy, but because you are no longer fighting it from a false sense of self. As the assumed change stabilizes, gratitude begins to arise naturally, not as a practice, but as a state. You feel grateful not only for what has appeared, but for what you know is unfolding. Gratitude becomes less about appreciation for circumstances and more about recognition of alignment. You are grateful because you feel congruent within yourself. You are no longer betraying your deeper knowing by living from doubt. The most profound realization that comes with this way of living is that you were never meant to be shaped by circumstances. Circumstances were meant to be shaped by you. The moment you truly accept this, responsibility replaces blame, empowerment replaces complaint. You stop asking why things happen to you and start asking who you are being within them. And that question alone begins to transform everything it touches. In this state, you no longer fear change. You become comfortable with it, even welcoming it. Because you understand that change is simply the outer world catching up to an inner decision already made. You trust yourself more deeply, not because you believe you control everything, but because you know where control truly resides. It resides in your assumption of self, in the identity you consent to occupy moment by moment, regardless of what is visible. As this alignment deepens, you begin to notice that even your memories seem to change their influence over you. Events from the past that once carried emotional weight lose their charge. They no longer define you or explain you. They become stories rather than identities. This happens because you are no longer viewing your past from the same state of consciousness in which it was created. You are revising its meaning simply by standing in a new assumption in the present. The past loosens its grip when you no longer use it as evidence of who you are. You also become more aware of how often people unknowingly assume against themselves. You hear it in casual conversations, in the way they describe their lives, their limitations, their expectations. You recognize this not with judgment, but with clarity. You see that most suffering is not caused by events themselves, but by the inner positions people occupy in relation to those events. This awareness strengthens your own commitment to remain conscious of what you are assuming, because you now see the consequences of unconscious assumption everywhere. As your inner world becomes more ordered, your outer life begins to reflect a sense of coherence. Things fall into place in ways that feel natural rather than dramatic. Solutions appear without frantic searching. You find yourself in the right place at the right time more often, not because of luck, but because your inner state is no longer pulling you into conflict with life. You are moving with it rather than against it. There is a growing sense of trust that develops, not just trust in life, but trust in yourself as a creative being. You begin to rely less on external validation and more on inner confirmation. You do not need immediate results to reassure you. You recognize the feeling of alignment as evidence enough. This inner confirmation becomes your compass, guiding your decisions and responses more reliably than circumstances ever could. When setbacks appear, as they sometimes will, you meet them differently. You do not collapse inwardly or abandon your assumption. You pause, you observe, and you return to the state you have chosen. You understand that a setback is not a verdict, it is feedback. It reveals where attention may have drifted or where an old belief is asking to be released. And instead of resisting this information, you use it to refine your inner position. You may also notice that your desires become clearer and more refined. You stop wanting things out of comparison or fear. Your desires begin to arise from a deeper sense of alignment with who you are becoming. They feel less urgent and more intentional. This clarity makes assumption easier because you are no longer divided between conflicting wants. You know what you want because you know who you are. In this clarity, imagination becomes more vivid and more disciplined at the same time. You do not scatter your inner focus across countless possibilities. You dwell deliberately in the one that represents your chosen change. You revisit it not out of anxiety, but out of familiarity, like returning to a place you love. This familiarity is powerful. It trains your nervous system, your emotions, and your identity to accept the new state as normal. Gradually, the outer confirmations begin to appear, sometimes subtly, sometimes unmistakably. A conversation goes differently than it would have before. An opportunity presents itself without struggle. A long-standing issue resolves itself quietly. These moments are not surprises to you anymore. They feel like confirmations of something you already knew. You receive them with calm appreciation rather than disbelief, because inwardly you have been living there all along. Even when major changes occur, you find that you are not overwhelmed by them. Success does not intoxicate you. and challenges do not defeat you. This balance comes from the fact that your identity is no longer dependent on conditions. You are rooted in assumption, not outcome. This makes your experience of life steadier, deeper, more resilient. You also become more compassionate, both toward yourself and others. You understand how long you lived without awareness of your creative power, and this understanding softens you. You no longer demand perfection from yourself. You allow growth to unfold, and in your interactions with others, you offer space rather than pressure, because you know that change, when it is real, always begins within. The more you live His way, the more natural it feels. What once required conscious redirection now feels automatic. You assume well-being, competence, and support without effort. These assumptions become the background of your life, quietly shaping your experiences without constant attention. You realize that this was always possible, that the only thing that ever stood in the way was unconscious loyalty to a smaller version of yourself. So now let this truth settle deep within you. The outer world is not the author of your life. You are. The circumstances you see, the people you meet, the challenges you face, these are only mirrors reflecting the inner state you have assumed. When you assume the change before you see the change, you step into the place of power that was always yours. You no longer wait for life to deliver your dreams. You become the conscious creator of them. You no longer react to what happens outside. You direct from what has already been established inside. Every thought, every feeling, every choice becomes a brushstroke, painting the reality you desire. And when you do this faithfully, consistently, with conviction and calm, life cannot help but respond. The change you imagine, the change you feel, the change you accept is already accomplished. This is the change that will inevitably appear. Step boldly into this knowing. Assume your transformation, live from it now, and watch as the world rearranges itself to confirm what you have already embraced within. The power has always been yours. Claim it, and let life flow as a reflection of the greatness you have chosen to be.